Today, I am joined by Mark Whitney, Libertarian candidate for President of the United States. He is running on a campaign, Keep Banging. We're going to get into a little bit of where that comes from. I love it. I love the slogan there. So, Mark, tell me a little bit about your libertarian history, how you became a libertarian, and why you decided to jump into this crazy race for president.
Okay, happy to do it. The first time I heard the word libertarian, I got to talk a little bit soft as I'm pumping the fluids and fighting a cold. But the first time I heard the word libertarian was 1982. I was working TV at the CBS affiliate in Boston on the 3rd floor. On the 5th floor, there was a very popular talk radio station hosted by 3 openly libertarian radio hosts. One of them, the guy who did 10 to 1 Monday through Friday, a guy named Gene Burns, he ran for the presidential nomination of the Libertarian Party in 1984. He was actually from Orlando. And when I heard him talk about libertarianism, very simply put, it sounded to me like 9th grade civics. So simple, so easy. That was my favorite academic course in high school, was 9th grade civics. I was a woodshop guy and a theater guy and a music guy, and I did the ski team, but my hand was always up in Mr. Ripley's class in civics. I loved it. And when Gene Burns talked about libertarianism, I was like, that's the Bill of Rights. That's the Constitution. I've always been kind of wired anti-authority, and I just love the idea of self-government, self-determination, and just calling the shots.
And I think that's great. And you know what? Your story, going back to back into the 80s, you had a
right.
You can't even carry a firearm, something that you mention a lot of times, to protect yourself, protect your family, exercise
Correct.
your right to your Second Amendment rights. And
Correct.
you discussed that, you've paid your dues, and now you are running a campaign to, be a voice for people who are forgotten about, I would say.
Yes, I'm looking to represent all citizens, but as a candidate, indirectly, I represent 25% of the country who has a criminal record. I think if 25% of your nation has a criminal record, it could be that you have too many laws. That might be the case. And then, 8-9% of the people they share the same civil disability I have. They have a felony conviction. And the fact of the matter is that you never pay your dues. The collateral consequences of having a felony conviction are so incredible. Not just the fact that your Second Amendment right is stripped, which is bad enough, but all the collateral consequences between the states. So I was fortunate to live in Vermont. So Vermont, in California, we have community property law. So all your property is shared equally with your wife. But in Vermont, they have something called tenants by the entirety, which means your wife is sort of a separate sovereign. You are separate. And then as a married couple, you are also separate. So my wife was able to function in commerce and keep her credit good, and I was married to her. So, after we lost everything, we were still able to rent a place, right? And I was still able to function. But, had I not had a wife who understood the multiple truths of my case, who stuck with me, it would be very difficult to function. It's very difficult to rent a house. It's impossible to get a job. And it's not good enough to just get rid of the box, make people not check the box. There has to be some sort of system in place, right? So at the time I was convicted, the longest prison term that I could have been given by the judge for that one count that I talk about, the Calmobile convict count, is 5 years. So I think it makes sense to have an offset sunset provision that if you stay clean for 5 years, not that your record gets expunged, but that it stops being public record. It still sits there at the court. The court and the government knows about it. If you pick up a new charge, it can be used to prove a pattern of conduct. But I believe at some point you've got to say, okay, this person fulfilled all the elements of their term of imprisonment. They did the supervised release. They did the community service. They paid their restitution. They started a company. Lawyers are paying the guy. He's democratized the law. His kids are killing it. Why are we still holding this guy down? This guy's a star. So there are many other people that have the potential to be stars, maybe not as resourceful as I am. And I want to have some sort of system like that in place. It's a big motivator for why I'm running for president.
And I believe a key point that you made, you paid your debt to society. Also, we have, when you talk about the 25% of people who have been incarcerated, We have victimless crimes that people are being charged with that do not, the crime punishment does not fit the crime. And also, your case was a nonviolent case, so I believe that obviously nonviolent.
I thought about violence. I thought about it.
Yeah, but you know, an example would be you have a nonviolent case. You know, something that really your Second Amendment shouldn't be stripped away for life.
Right. One of the things I learned in living with so many of the prisoners of the war on drugs is that most of the young black men I lived with, they were convicted of. They were first-time felons with regard to drug cases, and those cases involved consent between adults, oftentimes at-risk young black men selling to very well-to-do white men who were professionals, and so there was consent involved. But the law defines; they use legal fiction to define selling marijuana and cocaine as violent per se. Mm-hmm. So the way you're treated in prison, the way you're treated after prison. Is as if you committed a violent crime, but in fact, it's not violent at all.
And when you left, you mentioned starting a company after you left and you paid your debt to society. What have you done since then as far as activism and with your business?
Well, when I first got out of prison, I wanted to continue representing people going through the criminal justice system because I became one of the best post-conviction consultants in the country. And I had an opportunity to consult on cases that F. Lee Bailey was working on, and the government sued me to prevent me from doing that. When you're placed on supervised release, condition number 1 is that you work full-time and support your family. Condition number 2 is you tell employers you just got out of jail for bank fraud. That doesn't work so well. So I had to start my own consulting company, and the government tried to stop me from doing that, but I won that case. And in fact, I was hired by this banker who had F. Lee Bailey working for him at the same time F. Lee Bailey was representing OJ. So he wanted me to monitor F. Lee Bailey. I found a mistake F. Lee Bailey made in my somewhat client's case, and F. Lee Bailey's malpractice provider had to write my guy a check for $500,000.
Wow. And I also heard a rumor that you sued the Obama administration. Is that true?
I did. I'm the only citizen to independently sue Barack Obama and the United States for illegally having the U.S. Armed Forces participate in the civil war in Libya. Libya never attacked the United States. There was no authorization from Congress. There was no budget. Congress even renounced it. Congress actually renounced it and then locked down the purse to make sure that there would be no budget, and Obama continued to bomb. Jonathan Turley at Georgetown Law, he also brought a suit on behalf of 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. And both of those suits, the 2 judges in the United States District Court in D.C., they sat on those cases independent of each other, and they waited for Muammar Gaddafi to be killed, and they dismissed our lawsuits as moot. But we had the government on the ropes on the merits. The thing I took exception to was I saw Barack Obama at a press conference say, this isn't war, this is unlimited kinetic action. And when we called them on that, Obama's lawyers said, well, the United States Supreme Court has never defined war, so who's to really say what it is? So, you know, as long as you're bombing countries that are too poor to shoot back, they say it's unlimited kinetic action. Well, that's some bullshit.
Yeah. Well, you know, I don't think many people realize that you as a citizen could do exactly what you did to bring up a point to actually show that what the government is doing in that situation is wrong and fight the government. Everybody has that ability. Most people don't take that. It's very gutsy for you to do so, especially with the deep state.
Well, I like to do things that are difficult, and I carry my balls around in a wheelbarrow. I don't bend, I don't break, I don't bow. And so what I did there was I stood on principle, and we are sovereign citizens, and the government is allowed only to do that which we delegate to them. All authority resides within us, the people. That's natural law. And what the founders did at the First Continental Congress is they stood there, and some of those people were slaveholders. Others thought slaveholders were the dregs of humanity. They stood there, they tolerated each other, they held their nose, and said, we don't want a government, but God damn it, we've got to have a government to secure these certain rights. And when an executive, the chief executive of the largest corporation in the world, the President of the United States, steps outside the 4 squares of that document, I'm going to be there. I was there when Obama did it, and I'm going to be there as the Libertarian nominee to make sure it never happens again.
And I want to touch base on the Democratic debate disaster. I don't know if you've been paying attention to what the Democrats have been doing, how they've been running. I mean, the debate last night was a complete travesty, screaming over each other, yelling over each other. There's a lot of discourse within the party itself.
Right,
Is, is this the time for the Libertarian Party to step up and get involved where they could grab some of that attention and say, look how dysfunctional that party is. We are the third largest party. And you as a candidate, how could you bring that awareness to people?
Absolutely. So what I'm trying to, my message for libertarians, and right now, you know, I'm doing two things at the same time. I'm running a national campaign for president already. I'm trying to get a head start, right? And the national campaign is actually going better than the libertarian campaigns. The Trump supporters are up my ass on Facebook by the thousands. Libertarians are pissed off at me because I'm saying we need to do better than stand on stage at these debates and chant principles like a bunch of fucking monkeys. We need to be talking about the founding documents. And if you aren't able to have that conversation, get off the stage. I'm running for president. I have mastered the Constitution. I've mastered the U.S. Code. I've mastered the Code of Federal Regulations. I know the rules of judicial, criminal, and civil procedure. I know where the buttons are. So if Congress comes to me and they say to me, we want you to sign this ridiculous budget, I'm going to say, fine, I got a few things I want to have happen before I do that. And I have a very specific list of things, right? Federal Appellate Procedure 32.1 allows judges and judges alone to decide what cases are published in the law books. I beat the Department of Justice 3 times. Stephen Breyer, who's now in the U.S. Supreme Court, signed those orders, and none of them are in the law books. Most of the opinions judges sign, federal judges sign, do not appear in the law books and can't be cited as precedent. So since when I got my sentence declared unconstitutional, the judge gave me my relief because I had them dead to rights, but he didn't publish the case. Since then, I've been able to find 5 cases that are published where defendants and their lawyers were arguing the same thing and they all lost because they didn't have my case to cite as precedent.
Ever since this, you know, the Libertarian Party has constantly had infighting. They're not a united party. The people that are running for president, the other people, I've had Adam Kokesh on, I've had Kim Ruff before she dropped out of the race. I've spoke to Ken Armstrong. A lot of people are running. There's a huge group, and there's a lot of division. How do you bring that Libertarian Party together? Because you need to be together to raise the money to take on the big established politicians in the Republican and Democrat Party. Money is always a factor. How do we get that money?
I united Florida Libertarians in a matter of about 24 hours. All against me, but I united them. So when I show up, there's an impact, all right? Kokesh has taken 2 years to build his brand. I built mine in a weekend. So we're not, Libertarians, we're not going to have the first Libertarian president as a result of money. So here's the deal. The Democrats and Republicans need to raise a lot of money because they're boring. So the contract they have with the Wall Street traded media is, you know, people that you go to Iowa, go to Des Moines, pretend you care about those people. We'll take your picture. We'll put you in the New York Times. You'll raise money. We'll talk about how good you're doing. Then you go to New Hampshire. We'll take your picture there. We'll put you in the New York Times. We'll talk about how good you're doing and more money. So these, all of these debates, this process that goes on for 2 years, it's all very contrived. The Democratic National Committee actually gets 15% of the advertising money that CNN takes in. They are the advertising agency, and the candidates are a tribute. So the reason I got into this race, I looked at the Democrats, I looked at the Libertarians, I didn't see a president. And I predicted early, a year ago in my podcast, that it was going to be Trump and Sanders. I could see the handwriting on the wall. And if I'm up on the stage with Statler and Waldorf, forget about it. You know those 2 guys from the Muppet Show, the Heckle Fozzie Bear? That's who the mainstream parties are nominating fringe candidates. We got a fascist and a socialist. Trump has never read the Constitution, and everybody knows that. I could have a room full of 1,500 people all wearing MAGA hats, and if I said that, they would nod their head and agree. But they don't care, and the reason he gets away with it is because there's nobody pushing back. There are no Democrats pushing back on that. And there are no libertarians pushing back on it. Libertarians are the questions that come up in the debate is there anything in the Libertarian Party national platform that you disagree with? What are we in 7th grade? I'm running for fucking president over here. God damn.
Now, and that's a point that you bring up that I like to talk about is when you go to these debates, no matter what, and especially the National Convention, it's all about, you know, what in your libertarian principles. How libertarian are you? Can you?
How libertarian are you?
Right.
I sued a president. I've been put in a cage. I democratized the law. I I set myself on fire in Florida, right on the stage, standing for principle. My opponents sat there and deferred to authority. The question in that room is, do you stand up to authority or do you bow to it? And they all bow to it. You know why? Because all they care about is winning. They've all, especially Kokesh. I like Adam. He and I are both fucked up from our experiences with the government. We're both radicalized. But, Adam, I'm much more radical than Adam. Adam carries his radical caucus in his pants. I wave it around the stage, So I'm not fucking around in there. If you censor my speech at a presidential debate and you're a libertarian, I'm gonna question your judgment. I never questioned their right to do that. I'm saying your judgment is horrible. These are the same people who run around and try to convince people they discovered freedom. Well, freedom was around a long time before 1972 when we started this party. Right. So libertarians get kind of charismatic and they try to create this alternative universe and they live in this bubble and I'm trying to break that bubble so that we can take advantage of the single pipeline to the Oval Office that we share on an equal basis with the Democrats and Republicans. We are not a third party. As it applies to the office of the president, the United States is already a three-party system thanks to the work of the people in the Libertarian Party who built the backbone that allows us to have this conversation.
Let's talk a little bit about policies, because you are running to be the Libertarian candidate. And
yes.
Not enough policy gets discussed at all these conventions. It's a lot.
Correct.
Libertarian stuff. So let's hit some topics, and I want to get your feedback on this. National deficit is at $24 trillion any day now. It's going to hit that 24 trillion mark.
Yeah.
How do we rein in the spending when Congress, you're going to be president, right?
Right.
Congress is still going to have a bunch of Republicans and Democrats deciding because they have the power of the purse. How do you get a hold on them to balance the budget, control the spending, and bring down the debt?
So you got the revenue side and you got the spending side. So on the spending side, I am an advocate of collapsing the different branches of military into one single military. And you have one general. You don't have 6 different versions of the military. Ed Snowden exposed that the Director of National Intelligence was a fraud and a crook. So I'll pardon Ed Snowden, make him Director of National Intelligence, and collapse the intelligence community into a single agency. It's 17 agencies right now.
There's so many agencies.
I'm not saying we don't need intelligence. I'm saying that we don't need to have 17 versions of it. You have one thing you call intelligence, you put the hero that exposed the fraud in charge of it, right? And so it's about consolidation. I'm somebody that, the only thing I know how to do is to do things small and smart. I built my company, thelaw.net, which democratized the law for everyday lawyers on Main Street, United States. My main competitor is a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that has 6,000 employees. When we started out and we disturbed the universe, we did it by sending out 2 million emails a week to lawyers, and we had 3 people. And we had the servers in the kitchen of my house. And we very quickly started to change the way people think about legal research. So this is not my first rodeo coming in and blowing shit up. This is what I do. I'm a human battering ram.
So you need to batter Congress into condensing the expenses, reducing spending.
What I tried to show people the other night in Florida, what I tried to show them, and I believe me, I came out of that debate so happy. What I tried to show them is the president. I tried to show them a president. So you take me out of that Florida debate where everyone's pissed off because I dared to question their authority, right? And you put me in the Oval Office, and I have a similar mob in the Oval Office that I had in Florida opposing me, and the Democrats and Republicans from Congress and the risk management industrial complex come in and they go, Mr. President, we've got to bomb this country that hasn't attacked us. And I'm going to say, you mother Jacobers, get out of my office. That's what I'm going to say. Because not just because I'm the president, but because they're violating my sovereignty as a citizen. They don't have that authority. They're acting outside their authority, and they're asking me to join in that conspiracy. And that will never happen when I'm president. And that's why in the California debate, I said to Adam Kokesh, you know, on the off chance I was to be president, would you serve as Secretary of Defense? And the reason I asked him that is because I know that if Adam Kokesh is Secretary of Defense, he is never going to come to me with that request, ever. He participated in aggressive war. It had an incredible impact on him. He is a sensitive, intelligent, charismatic man, and he's working it out on stage, which is the most healthy way you can do it. And he has a narrative, and my question contradicts that narrative, but I believe that if I was the president-elect and I asked him to do that, that he would accept that role, and he would protect this nation from aggressive war.
Social Security, another main issue that nobody's talking about on any, I don't care what campaign stage, nobody, right. Social Security runs out in 2034. It's gone.
Right.
There's no money left. A lot of people who are seniors depend on that now, and and you're still in poverty. It's not a lot of money you're getting. Correct. How do we address the Social Security issue, and what would you do as president?
So let's talk about the deficit spending in general, which I didn't reply to directly. As a result of the company that the one company I lost in my life in my 20s was the one that was funded with debt. Financial literacy is what defines my family. We all are small business entrepreneurs in the private sector. We don't go to banks. We don't borrow money. We don't pay interest. We bootstrap everything from cash flow. And so when you're looking at a legacy program like Social Security, the correct answer for a Libertarian presidential candidate is to recognize that it took a minute to get here. It's going to take a minute to get out. Mm-hmm. So the United States is a fiduciary. It is in a position of trust to the people it has entered into this Social Security contract with. So you have people who are 65 who've been paying in throughout their entire career. You have people who are 35 who've been paying in for 10 or 15 years. So if you're going to sunset Social Security, it has to be done over a period of time. It has to be done on a pro rata basis, depending on how much money has been paid in. You have to honor the contract. You can't just yank the contract away. That's fraud, right? But and then you multitask and you work the separate track of having a system where people are able to have the choice of saving their own money. People should have a lot of options. I have no problem with people having options because different people have different personality types. So in the nirvana libertarian world, right, everybody is free to do as they please, and it's easier for everyone to start a business because there's less compliance and so forth. That's all great, but not everybody is wired to start a business, right? So there are going to be people who start businesses. There's going to be the guy who starts a $5 million company and build it up from cash flow over 2 or 3 years because he's like, great, all this compliance is out of the way. And then there are going to be people who work for that person. And those people should have choices. I think they should have choices. And I'm not committing or saying whether it should be government, private sector, or some combination. But directionally, I agree completely with the Libertarian Party platform that Social Security is bullshit. Mm-hmm. But this is what separates me from my opponents, right? I am able to multitask. I'm able to say, yes, this is directionally where I am. I agree with your philosophy, but I'm running to be the president of a corporation. There's a contract I'm sworn to preserve, protect, and defend. So I have to be able to multitask and have both of those conversations, and that is what's that helps me stand alone from all of my opponents. They're not able to have that conversation.
And I think something that gets lost is when Social Security was first enacted, it's basically it was a wage that the government put on the people.
It's a Ponzi scheme. Right,
because now they figured by the time people are eligible to retire, they pay into the system their entire lives. They're only going to live a few years after they are eligible to collect. The amount that they collect in return from what they put into it is never going to get matched. I am 38 years old. I would be open for an opt-out option personally. Like, I'm okay with, I'd rather not pay into Social Security. I max out every year. I've done the math. If I put that money into a private account, I would have more money when I retire.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's something that people are so afraid. It's like, but if you have that
any generic Vanguard account, you're killing it compared to Social Security.
So, I mean, just the option. I'm not even for like, okay, you can't get rid of it because people are dependent on it already. But options, I like options.
And the money's gone. My friend Erwin Schiff used to explain, the great Erwin Schiff used to explain that that the money doesn't go into trust. They spend the money now and then borrow more money and write themselves an IOU. So the way it's being executed is fraudulent and against their own laws that they wrote.
Yes, it is a complete scheme. I'm on board with that, but I like the option idea, and I agree with you on that because a lot of people just say you have to get rid of it. I'm okay with what you just said.
Well,
as an option.
people who jump to conclusory statements and just chant an answer to a libertarian FAQ, those are people who haven't done the work. I've actually done the work. And I'm not saying that I know all the answers legally, but as president, I will have libertarian lawyers around me. I will appoint libertarian-leaning judges, every libertarian judge I can find. You know, Judge Gray will be on the Supreme Court if he wants to be. There are people in the ACLU who are libertarian when it comes to the Bill of Rights. I will lift those people up. Michelle Alexander, Brian Stevenson, Ta-Nehisi Coates, people like that, they are on the same page as libertarians when it comes to civil liberties, equal access to justice, equal protection of the law. There is no light between us and those people.
Right. And I want to get into a little bit about health care. We're talking about options. The current candidates that are running on the left are basically want complete control of health care. Health care to be government controlled. I served in the armed forces. I was in the Marines. I was in Iraq in 2003. I came out and had to depend on the VA for, okay. So I have seen firsthand government-run healthcare. And
now, how would you rate that on a scale of 1 to 10?
0, maybe negative, because I had to wait 9 to 10 months for an appointment. Okay, if I need something now because my life depends on it, and I got to wait 9 months, good luck. VA hospitals, I've seen people go and come out of it almost like at the brink of suicide. Like they need help and they don't get it. Mental illness for veterans who come back with PTSD, who don't get the help that they need after the same government sent them to war. I don't want. They can't manage it for a few million, but they want to manage it for 300 million people. Ain't gonna happen. You have Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren talking about getting rid of private health care. Right. What is your libertarian stance on healthcare, or just your general stance? Because I believe in competition, and I believe competition and remove government will lower the prices. And
I believe in competition in all things, and that's what libertarians say. And, you know, that's what I was doing down in Florida, and no one wanted to compete. But, you know, the general answer for a diverse audience, for people who have not had your direct experience with the VA, is to say, look at education, right? Look at education. We know what education is because government defined it. They defined it very narrowly. It's a topic, it's a word. The word education should be the most liberally construed word in the English language, right? And it should not be put in a box. And what Bernie Sanders is advocating is putting Medicare, putting healthcare in a box. And if the government is a single payer, that will reduce entrepreneurism. It'll reduce innovation. It will encourage people who are brilliant to go into other things where they are freer to exercise their brilliance and their creativity. And so as an entrepreneur, a performing artist, someone who really is best when he's working from a blank sheet of paper, I can't even begin to wrap my mind around that, right? I can't even begin to wrap my mind around it. But you know, Sanders is sincere and authentic, and this is what he believes. And as libertarians, we need to be better listeners. We need to not practice zero tolerance. We need to be tolerant. We need to listen, and we need to understand why does someone like Bernie Sanders get to the place he is, and why is there such a large audience for his message? And the answer is because the people have been crippled. The people have been crippled. They can't do it for themselves anymore. So there's this massive audience for free shit.
And the problem is people who have been crippled think they've been crippled because the system was not fair for them. But they can fix the system by adding more system.
Yes,
more government.
it's a dysfunctional codependent relationship, right? When you keep going back to your abuser to seek solutions to the abusive problems they created. That is a codependent psychological problem, and you need somebody like me who comes in and will stand on stage in front of the mob and call bullshit. And for a week or two, everyone has cognitive dissonance, but then a new reality is created, and now you can have some reasonable conversations.
I think if people are educated that the system that is set up now is the reason why it's so expensive, because all the government red tape, because they mandate a certain amount of people having to be attached to this, to this, to this. Their
Correct.
involvement is what caused this. Remove them.
That's the value of a libertarian president. The biggest opportunity of a libertarian president, especially if it's somebody like me who's been on my feet, running my mouth for 30 years in every kind of venue. I mean, I have stepped on my dick more times than I can tell you, and that's why I'm able to get good at this. The big opportunity is the ability to assign ideas to people, the ability to message, right? Mm-hmm. So my messaging will be all about individual autonomy, but the messaging from the authoritarian president and the two major parties is all about institutional authority. So once a week, I will go speak at a high school. Once a week, I will go speak at a local chamber of commerce. And then on Saturday night, once a week, I will come out and stand in front of the White House and deliver joke of the week. And it will be at somebody's expense who deserves it.
I want to, now that you know like how I feel about the VA, I want to get into this military industrial complex, something that people who run on the libertarian line always get into discussing. Yep. So the only person that's addressed it from the Democratic Party is Tulsi Gabbard. Nobody else in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party is bringing awareness to this problem.
Right.
Ever since World War II, pre-World War II, we still had a great military. We still had a massive fighting force able to defend this country. Right. But ever since then, we've been expanding our military control, expanding bases on a world global level. We have troops everywhere.
Yep.
The reason why it seems like that a war happens to start up every 10, 15 years is we are beholden to the contracts with these major companies that develop weapons, and like Lockheed Martin and so on and so forth. They have to show off their equipment. Look how great our equipment is. They're
not creative enough to get customers in the real world, so they have to get money from the government.
Right. So the expanse of the military industrial complex is it's not slowing down anytime soon. The budget for the military went up to $725 billion for the next fiscal year, I believe. So what do you do as president? I mean, I do firmly believe that we need a strong military for defense.
Yes.
Something that gets lost with the libertarian ideas of, they think that you just want to get rid of the military. Explain what you would do with the military.
Well, the president doesn't have the option of getting rid of the military. The founders wrote the Constitution. They said there will be a military. So the president is obligated to uphold that contract. At the same time, they said, but since we created this military, by the way, there's no way we're giving up our guns. So we're going to hang on to those. But so I look at it on an international law basis. So international law is something you can put on an index card. It's a real thing. And the defining element of international law is the same thing that defines the Libertarian Party, the principle of non-aggression. You don't wage aggressive war. You don't be the one to start the fight. You only shoot when someone shoots at you. That's the rule. Imagine if we lived in a world, where a president decided to let the military from a foreign country come in and just camp out in Ohio. People would be apoplectic. They would understand immediately how wrong that is. So that is the standard that I apply. Exactly the standard you articulated. And I use the example of Adam Kokesh. The only time I would see Secretary of Defense Adam Kokesh in my office is if missiles were inbound to Cleveland. That's it. That's it. And he would already have clearance for me to take those out. He wouldn't have to pick up the phone. So I'd probably never see him because I don't want to see him otherwise.
Right.
I don't want to see him otherwise.
I think that's something that always holds people back because the other two parties use that fear tactic that if you elect somebody who's a libertarian, our national defense will go to crap. And
well, those that narrative is libertarians have had a history of making themselves easy to marginalize by not putting in the work when they're putting on presidential debates. So, people look at the presidential debates who are not libertarians and they're like, look at this shit show. That is not unreasonable, right? That's not an unreasonable conclusion. But these are good people. Like Vermin Supreme would make a great White House press secretary. And Berman would make a great commissioner of IRS. And Jo Jorgensen would make a great ambassador to the United Nations because she would just nicely tell them to behave and they would listen because she's so nice. And then Hornberger could be White House counsel because he won that one case in Texas 40 years ago. And then he can get me a Coke. Jacob, get me a Coke, will you, you mother Jacober?
So I want to wrap up with the hot topic, obviously China. China with the trade issues that we've had. Obviously,
Right.
Libertarians believe in free trade and not having the government tax the people for conducting business overseas. I mean, tariffs are tax.
Tariff is a tax, and the trade war is a war.
Right.
The management of economic transactions is warlike on the people.
Now,
I have personal experience in my family with China, because my son Chris, he invented an Xbox repair kit when he was 18, and he engaged in free trade with his friend Wilson in China when we met on a video game. So when he needed to manufacture replacement parts, Wilson hooked him up with Chinese engineers, and my garage was filled with boxes. He had a customs agent, and it was just there were no lawyers, no accountants, no nothing. Chris would send 5-figure checks to China, and the guy would take the money. There were no contracts.
Right.
And it was awesome. It's just a beautiful thing. And I always try to have, a libertarian story from my life. So whenever a free trade in China comes up, that's the story I tell.
I think we all agree that free trade would be wonderful, obviously, the current situation. But because of this coronavirus, that's, the hot topic from China. Obviously, we have to worry about this pandemic that has been spreading through the news.
Yes.
A lot of things are made in China.
Yep.
Is there a way that we can have this type of vibrant economy in a global world, but we are still self-sufficient, God forbid something like this happens, where we don't have to depend on China for pharmaceuticals, because a lot of the pharmaceuticals are done over in China. So now we have an issue where the virus is spreading, but we need to remain some sort of self-sufficient.
Well, the answer to that is yes, because we the people authorize the chief executive, the president, to enter into contracts with foreign nations, and we can negotiate any sort of, we call them treaties, which makes them sound mysterious. They're just contracts.
Right.
And we enter into contracts with foreign nations all the time. So whether it's a coronavirus or a Bud Light virus or a Michelob virus or an IPA virus, you can negotiate those things and work them out. And as long as it's being done with the objective of encouraging free trade, right? If ever there are two countries in the world that need each other, it's China and the United States.
Right.
Where I live here in San Diego, we have so many people from Asia here, so many Chinese people, and they have a very different culture where their options as human beings are very much more narrow than ours are. There's the science and math track, and there's the factory track. That's pretty much China. And I want to see I'm a humanist. I want to see all people lifted up on the altar of creativity and entrepreneurship and free trade and kindness and tolerance. That is what the 14th and First Amendments are all about. It's all about tolerating differences in people's opinions and religion and all that stuff. So I carry the spirit of those amendments. I carry those words in my heart. And that's why I took such offense at the judgment of people in Florida.
I'm jealous that you're in San Diego, because I used to be stationed out there, and that is the best place in the world to live weather-wise.
Yes. If you have to live in one place in the United States from January 1st to New Year's Eve, this is where you want to be.
Oh, my God. It's amazing.
Yep.
And you have the best zoo in the world, too.
Yeah.
I want to thank you very much for coming on to this podcast. I want to give you the opportunity. Please tell everybody where they can follow you. How can they donate money to your campaign? How can they get involved if they want to volunteer? Where do they go?
Thank you very much. And by the way, you're one of the best hosts that I've been interviewed by since I've been running. So congratulations for that. Great job today. You were prepared. You did an excellent job. So mark@markwhitney.com is my email, mark@markwhitney.com. Markwhitney.com is the website. One of the things that is a priority right now is that we qualify for the presidential debate in Texas. So what Texas Libertarian Party is doing is they're having an auction. They're auctioning off 4 debate slots to the candidates who raise the most money for the Texas Libertarian Party. That's what they're doing. So I'm currently number 2, and what I want to do is I want to go into Texas, which is Professor Hornberger's home state, and I want to be number 1. So if you like what you heard today, send an email to mark@markwhitney.com, mark@markwhitney.com, and I will give you the link, the Mark Whitney link on the Texas Libertarian website. You cannot donate more than $100. Anything you might be able to provide if you like what you heard today. Even if you're not going to vote for me, even if you disagree with me, All you have to do is agree that competition is a good thing, and I'm going to be providing competition throughout the remainder of this campaign. I'm not going to stand there like a potted plant. I'm going to speak the truth about what I think is going on and not going on in the room, and my opponents can get in the room and deal with that or not. Ultimately, if they don't, they will be marginalized as being politically irrelevant.
And I love competition. I love the fact that you are a competitive guy, because there's too much in today's society, especially now, that everybody gets that participation trophy, and it doesn't apply like that in the real world, and you have that experience. So
Correct.
I appreciate you bringing that up.
Right on.
Definitely check out Mark Whitney's website. Have it up, markwhitney.com. Also, markwhitney.com. Have it up right now. And he's got a great website. He's got a lot of information on there about his campaign. I want to remind everybody who is listening to this, subscribe on your favorite podcast catcher. And if you're watching this episode on the YouTube channel, subscribe, give a comment, and please give a like to the episode. And go check out our other episodes. Mark Whitney is not the first presidential candidate I have interviewed this year. I've got previous candidates. Ken Armstrong was on not too long ago. And I hope to kind of open up the eyes. I bring in a lot of different people from different interviews and try to get people to see that there is another option, not just the Democrats and the
Good for you, man. That's good for you.
Thank you very much for taking the time. I know you got a cold, and good luck. And you have a lot. I looked at your schedule. You are all over the country at all these conventions.
Yeah, I'm just a package that gets shipped around.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I'm going to Alabama tomorrow. But when I step on the plane, I say, "We're going to Birmingham, right?" And they go, "Yep." I'm like, "Okay, good. I got the right plane."
Good.
Good. Yeah.
All right, sir. Well, good luck in your campaign, and I'll probably see you down in Austin, in Texas.
Thank you, man. I appreciate your time. The road to Austin. Yes, sir.
Hey, guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. Subscribe to the show, like it, and comment. Also, if you want the audio version because you're traveling, you're in a car, and you can't watch it, you don't have time to watch the episodes, you could go in the show notes. There is a link provided. Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, whatever your pleasure may be. Join me and listen via the audio versions on those other platforms, okay? But I really like YouTube. I like the way it's working out. And if you can, subscribe. The more subscribers, the better the content I can provide you. And it costs you nothing. So I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next time.